Welcome everyone. My name is Raghav Jagannathan. We are here for this webinar on Effortless Document Collaboration Sync, basically with NetDocuments and Teams, SharePoint, and OneDrive. Once again, my name is Raghav Jagannathan. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Cobot Inc. We are the creators of netDocShare Sync that helps you synchronize content between NetDocuments and the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So we're going to look at today some of the key challenges that customers face when it comes to sharing content between users in Microsoft 365 ecosystem, including SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, and NetDocuments, and how netDocShare Sync can bridge that gap. So let me get started by sharing my screen and showing you some key use cases on how we are helping customers achieve that. So before we get started, we just wanted to open up a couple of polls here to make sure that we can get a couple of indicators on what are some of the hot buttons when it comes to synchronizing content between NetDocShare, NetDocuments, and Microsoft Teams and SharePoint. So I'm just going to go ahead and start a couple of polls here. And on that note, let's get started. So we just wait for the polls to finish. Thank you, everybody who's responding to the poll here. So as you can see here, we have a product called netDocShare Sync. What netDocShare Sync lets you do is basically synchronize content between NetDocuments and SharePoint, Teams, Microsoft OneDrive for Business, as well as network shares. So with netDocShare, you can basically have content both syncing bidirectional as well as one-way between these two subsystems, NetDocuments and Microsoft 365 services. Some of the key use cases that often customers come to us with is, look, my collaboration is happening in Teams today. For example, attorneys are creating possibly documents in Teams. Some firms might have a matter team that they're collaborating on. And so when you provision something like that in Teams, obviously the work itself, the documents itself might be created in Teams. Microsoft just happens to have a better, richer collaboration tool set when it comes to creating documents with Microsoft Office. So one of the key use cases for netDocShare Sync that customers come to us with is, look, I have documents in Teams. How do I make sure that that content is being securely and properly saved into NetDocuments? And that content can get created in SharePoint, Teams, or OneDrive, the personal drive for attorneys on Microsoft 365. So as you can see with netDocShare Sync, we have the ability to basically synchronize all that content from your Microsoft 365 ecosystem, both in one directional or bi-directional way with NetDocuments. So a couple of things to note here with sync types, you would see that we have many different type of sync types, from bidirectional to one-way. So we have the bidirectional SharePoint NetDocuments, or one-way from NetDoc SharePoint and SharePoint NetDocs. We have bidirectional Teams to NetDocs or NetDocs to Teams, as well as we have a number of other sync types as well, including the ability to synchronize network shares, the ability to kind of do a bidirectional sync between network shares and Microsoft Teams, including a full-blown migration possibly of network shares into Teams as well. As you can see, one of the options here called network share to Teams. We also support the ability to synchronize content within NetDocuments. For example, if you're looking at possibly reprovisioning workspaces, for example, if you want to move a workspace between cabinets, or if you want to copy content between workspaces, Or if you want to copy content between tenants, NetDocuments tenants, like my dev tenant, I have a workspace that I want to, or a cabinet that I want to copy over to my production tenant or vice versa, you can also do that with our netDocShare sync software. So let's first look at a couple of options here. We'll take on bidirectional SharePoint. So as soon as you select bidirectional SharePoint, a few options light up. You would see something like a sync frequency lights up that lets you control how often the synchronization process is supposed to run. And we also have our permissions control light up, where you can control by default whether permissions are copied over in both directions. One of the things we support is copying over best of permissions, view, edit, basically the permissions that shared administrator from NetDocuments. You can copy that over into SharePoint and vice versa. The document library and list content permissions, the granular permission that you might have in SharePoint and Teams, you might want to copy over to NetDocs, assuming that both these systems use Microsoft OneDrive or Active Directory. And last but not the least, you also have the ability to control something called date timestamp, where you have the ability to say, okay, you know what, the created by, modified by, created, modified, I want to copy that over into from NetDocuments to SharePoint or SharePoint to NetDocuments. And we make it really, really simple. So here, obviously, I'm going to go ahead and do the setup manually. So the job setup itself, I'm going to show how you can manually set it up, but the whole thing can be completely automated. With our automated setup process, you can basically, I'm going to log in here to my demo tenant quickly so that I can show you how easy it is to set it up as a one-off job, or you can set this up as a bulk job process. So I can simply go in here, select my location because it's bidirectional. I'm just going to select a site collection here that I want to synchronize some content with. And here I'm going to select one of my document libraries. You can see it automatically pulls up the document libraries automatically. So I'm going to go ahead and select my SPND bidirectional. And here I can go and select my workspace that I want to synchronize with. So a couple of things to note here as we think about synchronization, especially bidirectional. So one of the things that we do with netDocShare Sync is the ability to make sure that versions are not getting lost. This is often a hot button topic. Almost every firm tells us the same thing, which is, look, we don't want version conflicts to happen. We want to make sure that people are only working on one system, not both systems, meaning that if I'm working in NetDocs, I don't want somebody to accidentally change that in Teams. If I'm working in Teams or SharePoint, I don't want somebody to accidentally change that in NetDocs. So with the feature called checkout propagation, so we can propagate, basically make sure that something that is checked out in NetDocuments is also checked out in Teams, also checked out in SharePoint, also checked out in OneDrive. So with checkout propagation, we have the ability to control the lock status on the document. So if somebody is collaborating in NetDocs, aka they're modifying the documents in NetDocs, the document cannot be modified in Teams. Sync will make sure of that. Or if the document is being co-authored in Teams, it cannot be checked out in NetDocuments. One more question often that comes up during these demos that I see we do one-on-one is, well, what about version control? So what if I had multiple versions in NetDocs? Our sync tool, we can control the versions that you copy over. We always copy the latest version, but we also give you the option to copy all versions on both directions. So you can see here, I've set up I'm trying to set up at least a sync job between a SharePoint document library and a NetDocuments location. I'm simply going to synchronize everything in that folder called Fleetings. And I'm going to synchronize, actually, I'm going to go in the folder here. I'm going to synchronize everything in that folder with everything in this folder. And that way, now I have a sync job that I'm going to start. And just like that, I've just set up a sync job that will just take care of content back and forth between the two locations with version control, with checkout propagation, all that automatically handled. So let's look at some of the other things. We wait for it. So some of the other sync jobs that we have, sync types that we have, are things like SharePoint and NetDocs. This is one of the two popular sync types. A lot of firms want to move content out of SharePoint into NetDocs for obvious compliance and governance reasons. So with the SharePoint and NetDocs option, we have the option called Move Files. With Move Files, you can basically move files permanently and folders permanently out of SharePoint into NetDocs. And you have the choice to leave behind a linked document so that when you click on the document in SharePoint, it automatically opens in NetDocs. So SharePoint and NetDocs is a very popular feature that we have that lets you migrate content from SharePoint and or Teams. Everything I'm showing you for SharePoint also applies to Teams and OneDrive. We also have the NetDocs to SharePoint. This is also a very popular feature that the customers love, both NetDocs to SharePoint and NetDocs to Teams and NetDocs to OneDrive, but this is a one-way sync. So basically you push content from NetDocs into SharePoint, Teams, or OneDrive with the ability to either copy all versions or just copy doc links. So as opposed to copying the entire document, you have the ability to just copy specific documents or document links, as not just as physical documents, document links. So when you click on the document in SharePoint or Teams or OneDrive, it actually opens the documents in NetDocs. One more feature that we also have here with NetDocs to SharePoint, we see a lot of customers trying to basically to find a cheaper storage place for customers to save those archived matters, the matter workspaces in NetDocs, in a location where it makes sense. It's where storage is cheaper, which is basically Microsoft 365. So with NetDocs to SharePoint, we also give you the option to copy the entire workspace from NetDocs and back it up into SharePoint as well, especially archived matter workspaces. So at this point, I'm just going to open up a quick poll. I'll let you guys respond to the poll as we're right in between the middle of the webinar. So I'm going to show you some of the other features that we have in NetDocShare Sync as well. So one of the things that I have not showed you so far is NetDocs to Teams. So bidirectional Teams to NetDocs is again one of our most popular features. With bidirectional features, you now have the ability to have collaboration happen in Teams. And a couple of key things to note here, as I'm kind of set this up quickly. As I said before, you don't have to do them one by one. We understand that some firms might have thousands of teams. So you don't have to come into NetDocShare Sync and go through and set up for each team. So you can automate the full process end to end, meaning that you can automatically create the sync job when the team is created or after the team is created. So from an end user perspective, from an attorney perspective, you do not need to worry about, or the attorney doesn't need to worry about, hey, is this getting copied over into NetDocs, or is my content living in NetDocs? So that will automatically happen behind the scenes. So with bidirectional Teams to NetDocs, you can be rest assured that your attorneys can collaborate in Teams while their work product is automatically copied into NetDocs. Along with the checkout propagation, the permissions, including metadata, the date, timestamp, all that taken care of. Let's just look at this quickly, how this works from a bidirectional perspective. You can see here, I'm doing this manually. You don't have to. As I said, it can be automatically done through a bulk import process or through an API. We have many different options, or through a Power Automate workflow. Basically, once the setup is super easy. You go into the UI here, you go in and say, okay, which channel I want to synchronize content with. And I'm going to go and find my workspace, my demo workspace here. And I can find my workspace in the cabinet, or I could have toggled the different cabinet. And I can go in and now select my content that I want to copy into Teams. So with this approach, now I have the ability to basically pick and choose. So you can see here, I can simply copy that agreement into this location, and I can copy anything here. In fact, let's say copy all. I can simply save it. And this will take care of automatically bidirectional synchronization between Teams and NetDocs. So again, with our sync types, some of the other things we have a couple types as well, which might be very useful, especially for Teams users. So we have this NetDocs to Teams and Teams to NetDocs, very similar to a SharePoint, except that with NetDocs to Teams, you also, with Teams to NetDocs, let's tackle that first before I do NetDocs to Teams. We also give you the option to archive chats. This is huge. So with the Teams to NetDocs, when you say that, look, my collaboration in Teams is over, and my matter now is in archive state or basically in an active state, and you want to make sure that all your records for that matter are in your DMS, your NetDocuments application. So with Teams to NetDocs, when you select move files, when you want to move everything out of the Teams into NetDocs, you have the ability to also archive chats, not just one chat, the entire chat for each and every channel that you have in the team. And you also have the option to strip out attachments from the chat and save them as actual documents in NetDocs. So especially when you collaborate in Teams, you might be dragging and dropping documents. With the Save to NetDocuments functionality or Archive to NetDocuments, we have the ability to save the entire chat along with stripping out the attachments and saving that into NetDocs. And it's very easy to set up. You can do this again manually or programmatically. You can just say move files, and you can replace whether you want to replace files with links or not. And you can select the move timing on it, if it's immediate or this or custom. And once you select all that, you simply select the team that you want to archive or move content out of, including chats, and you select the location where you want to save it to in NetDocs. It's exactly similar to bidirectional, just with a little bit more options. So this is one of our very popular sync types because it's not only helping you migrate content from Teams to NetDocs, but it's also letting you archive important matter-centric data, including conversations, posts, from Teams to NetDocs. I also want to kind of touch base on netDocShare. This is something that has come up recently in a number of projects we are getting involved with, especially for law firms who are looking to provision teams using our different software we have called netDocShare provisioning, where you can govern the life cycle of the Microsoft team itself, including Microsoft SharePoint, extranets, and intranet sites, all through a provisioning engine. And in that provisioning engine that we have, or provisioning software that we have, you have the ability to do everything that I'm showing you, from setting up teams that are automatically set up to sync content back to NetDocs. It's automatically set up to basically archive data when the team is archived to NetDocs. But as we embark on these projects, as we are currently working on those projects with customers, one of the key things that comes up in those projects is network shares. So we are literally the only software in the market that lets you do the gamut of the sync types that we offer all under one umbrella, including network share. So when you set up a client matter-centric team in Microsoft Teams, there's a very strong chance that the firm has a boatload of content in network share. To address that, we ship an option with netDocShare Sync on network share to Teams. What that lets you do is like a one-time migration or a one-time synchronization between network share to that specific client matter team. And once that's done, you can basically use any one of our other sync types to then copy the content from NetDocuments or to NetDocuments from Teams using one of our other sync types, that is Teams to NetDocs and NetDocs to Teams are bidirectional. So this tool can not only be used for setting up teams, governing teams, making sure your content is synchronized between Teams and NetDocs and as well as SharePoint OneDrive. You can also use it for mass migrations, like terabytes of data migration from network shares to Teams. And once you're in Teams, you can set up other types of sync types that we have to synchronize content between Teams and NetDocuments. So bidirectional network share to NetDocuments, some customers we work with also want to migrate content from network share to NetDocuments. You can do that as well through our sync types that we offer. The 5 minutes I have left, I also want to briefly talk about the move NetDocuments. This lets you basically move content between cabinets. Basically, if you have a workspace A that in a cabinet, in this case, let's say clients, and I have a workspace, let's say one of these workspaces I select, I can move the workspace with everything preserved, all the doc IDs, all the object IDs, everything preserved between two cabinets, from one workspace to the other. With copy functionality, we also have the ability to copy content between regions or tenants. Basically, the ability to pick the tenant on the NetDocument side. For let's say I have a dev tenant that I want to copy some content. Or if you are multi-tenanted, you could also copy content, as I said, from dev to prod or within your prod tenant itself. And you can copy one or more cabinets or one or more cabinet workspaces between regions or tenants. So with our exhaustive set of features that we have for our sync types, from bidirectional SharePoint NetDocs to Teams NetDocs to OneDrive NetDocs to NetDocs to NetDocs, hands down, we have the best sync options that's available to most customers. The last thing I want to show you guys in the few minutes we have left before I take on questions, I see a bunch of questions posted here, which I'll address them. The last thing I want to talk about is a OneDrive. So we see increased adoption of OneDrive. OneDrive is being now adopted by a number of North American firms. We've seen this trend over the last 2 years really take off around the APAC firms, but now North America is catching up to OneDrive. So with a bidirectional to OneDrive, you can set up, remember, OneDrive by design is private. The repository is for attorneys, private briefcase, private folder. By design, nobody can access my OneDrive except for me. I can share content from my OneDrive with other attorneys and other users, but nobody can access it. So with OneDrive Sync, you can basically, as an admin, you can set up a sync process on behalf of the attorney. Either use this tool or through a provisioning engine where you can bulk provision, basically making sure that every time a personal workspace exists in NetDocs, it's automatically synchronized with the person's OneDrive, with the attorney's OneDrive. That could be huge. So with the ability to, and we also ship a desktop app for attorneys so they can take files and folders with them as they travel. So you would see that rather than having an end user tool, a power user tool, we have an end user tool called netDocShare OneDrive Sync. So once you set that up on attorney desktops, they can pick and choose what files they want to synchronize from NetDocuments with their personal OneDrive. So in this way, they have the ability to take folders and files with them without worrying about, oh, what happens if I'm in a plane, I want to work on some content from NetDocs? Sure, with automatic synchronization, you can work on in the plane, and when you come back online, it automatically synchronizes back to NetDocs. Remember, version control, security, all that is automatically handled. So I'm right at time here, so I have a bunch of questions being posted on the chat here. If I'm unable to answer all these questions, we will respond back to them as a follow-up email. So the first question here I'm being asked is, do you have a bidirectional sync folder names as well? User changes folder name in Teams, will it change in NetDocs? Great question. So our sync is truly bidirectional and it stands by the definition of sync. Sync not only synchronizes files, it synchronizes file names, folder names, security, and metadata. And these are all options you can turn off and turn on. So when you rename something in Teams, something meaning folders and files, it renames that in NetDocs. Obviously, if it's not checked out in NetDocs. Well, frankly, if it's checked out in NetDocs, it'll be checked as well because of checkout propagation. But the point is that any asset that you did, for example, we also have an option of delete, where if you delete something in NetDocs, it'll also delete in Teams using the optional delete propagation feature. Same thing in the Teams. If you delete something in Teams, and it's being synchronized to NetDocs, it will also delete that in NetDocs, again with that optional delete sync feature enabled. All right, so I have a lot of questions here. One more question has been asked is, how is a desktop tool different than ND Sync? That's a great question. NetDocShare Sync is not a competitive product in ND Sync. So NetDocShare Sync